My father and stepmother demanded $120,000, the money I had saved to buy my first home, to fund my half-sister's extravagant wedding. A month later, they refused to pay me back and even dared me to sue them. So I decided to teach them a lesson they never forget. I stood quietly in the corner of the grand ballroom, surrounded by shimmering crystal chandeliers and gold-trimmed champagne glasses. The orchestra played some classical tune I couldn't name, and everyone smiled like this was the happiest day of their lives. Everyone, except me. I wasn't smiling. I couldn't. The woman twirling in the center of the dance floor in a $5,000 wedding gown was Amanda, my half-sister. And while she soaked in the spotlight, I stood with trembling hands and a hollow chest, wondering how I'd ever let them take everything from me. 1 month ago, I had $120,000 saved to buy my first home. My dream. My safety net. My escape from years of emotional coldness. Today, that dream danced in designer heels across a marble floor while I stood in clearance shoes I picked out from a thrift store 2 weeks ago. Rachel, a familiar voice purred behind me. I turned to see Teresa, my stepmother, draped in a glittering lavender gown that probably cost more than my old car. She sipped from her flute, glanced down at my outfit, and smirked. "You've been awfully quiet tonight," she said, tilting her head like she cared. "Not feeling left out, are you?" I didn't respond. I was too afraid my voice would crack. "Oh, come now," she continued, her voice dripping with sugar-coated poison. "This entire event wouldn't have happened without your generous little donation." That word hit me like a slap. Donation? I clenched my fists. "Teresa, you and Dad promised to pay that money back. You said it was temporary." She took another sip and gave me a mocking smile. "Oh, sweetheart. You can't seriously think we'd borrow that kind of money for a wedding. It was a gift. You gave it out of love. Didn't you?" I looked toward my father across the room. He was laughing with Amanda and her new in-laws, glass in hand, like nothing was wrong. He looked right past me, just like he always had. My chest ached, not from anger, but from betrayal. A deep, aching kind that doesn't make you scream, it makes you silent. Hollow. "You promised," I whispered. "You both said, then sue us," Teresa said suddenly, her tone turning sharp, her smile gone. "Go ahead. Take us to court over some family help. Let's see how far that gets you." She turned and walked off, heels tapping like gunshots on the marble floor. I stood frozen. But I wasn't broken. Not this time. Slowly, I reached into my purse and tapped my phone. The screen lit up, recording saved. Every word. Every smug syllable. Captured. I stared down at the glowing screen, and for the first time that evening, I smiled. Growing up, I always felt a strange distance in our house. It wasn't obvious, but it was always there. My father was distant, and my stepmother, Teresa, seemed to never care much about me. They didn't abuse me, not physically, but the neglect I experienced from both of them was something I could never shake off. The difference in how they treated me compared to Amanda, my half-sister, was glaring. Amanda was Teresa's precious little angel. She would get all the attention, the praise, and the gifts. I was just there. Not once did I feel like I was important enough to them. It wasn't that I hated Amanda. She was just a little girl, and I knew she didn't understand what was happening. But I couldn't deny how badly it hurt to watch her get everything while I was pushed to the side. It made me feel invisible. As I got older, the gap between us only widened. On my 18th birthday, my dad sat me down, and I knew something was off. He looked at me like he didn't even know who I was anymore. He wasn't the man who had raised me. This wasn't a father, this was a stranger. "Rachel," he started, his voice cold and distant, "you need to understand that you're not a child anymore. It's time for you to grow up." Those words hit me like a ton of bricks, and I remember just sitting there, wondering what had gone wrong. What had I done to deserve being treated like this? But I held my emotions in check. I didn't want to show weakness, especially when I felt betrayed by the people I had trusted the most. My dreams of getting into college were now the only thing that kept me going. It felt like the only thing I had that was truly mine. Despite everything, I continued to push through, determined to make something of myself. But as the years passed, it became painfully clear that I was still just an afterthought to my father and Teresa. And it wasn't until that one day, the day they asked for my help, that everything changed. The phone call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at work, sitting at my desk, preparing for a meeting when I saw my father's name flashing on the screen. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if this would be just another awkward, impersonal conversation. But I answered anyway, not wanting to be rude. "Rachel, we need to talk." My father's voice came through, heavy with a seriousness I hadn't heard in years. I could feel my heart skip a beat. What could this be about? It wasn't like him to call out of the blue. I braced myself. "What is it, Dad?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral, even though my anxiety was growing. "We need help funding Amanda's wedding. You know how important this is to her, and frankly, your mother and I have hit a financial snag." He paused, as if waiting for my reaction. "We need $120,000. Can you help us out?" I sat there, stunned. The number felt like a punch to the gut. I had saved every penny I had over the past few years. All of it was meant for my first home, my escape from this toxic environment. This wasn't just money to me, it was my future. "Dad, I don't have that kind of money," I said, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. "I've been saving up to buy my first home. I can't just give that up." He sighed, the sound filled with impatience. "Rachel, come on, we're family. It's for Amanda's future, and you're our only hope. Don't you want to be part of this?" I felt my stomach twist. The pressure to give in was overwhelming. I hadn't even been able to save enough to feel secure, yet here they were, asking me for everything. "Let me think about it," I said, my voice barely a whisper, as I hung up the phone, feeling completely overwhelmed. The next few days were a blur. I went back and forth in my mind, weighing the decision. On one hand, this was family, my dad and his wife, the people who had raised me. But on the other hand, this was my future. My home. My life. In the end, I made the decision. I agreed to give them the money. I told myself that it would be worth it, that this could be the way to finally gain their approval, to prove I wasn't the outsider anymore. But little did I know, this choice would come to haunt me. The day after I transferred the money to my father and stepmother, I felt a sinking pit in my stomach. I tried to brush it off, telling myself that I had done the right thing. The wedding was important to them, and I'd been a part of the family for so long. This could be the moment I finally gained their respect. But as the days passed, the weight of my decision grew heavier. I kept hearing about the extravagant plans for Amanda's wedding. The private yacht charter, the designer gowns, the lavish venue that cost more than my annual salary. Every new detail added to the suffocating guilt I felt. They were spending my hard-earned money like it was nothing. My phone buzzed late one night, and it was a message from my dad. "We're so grateful, Rachel. Amanda's wedding is going to be perfect. She's so happy." I stared at the message, my fingers trembling on the screen. Perfect? Perfect for who? Amanda, who had always been spoiled and entitled, had no idea what I was sacrificing for her. I had given up my dreams for her perfect day. I couldn't help but feel used. Weeks went by, and the wedding preparations were in full swing. I kept asking my father when they would pay me back, but every time I brought it up, he would change the subject. "We'll get to it soon, don't worry. It's just a lot going on right now," he would say, avoiding eye contact whenever I pressed him. Then, a month later, I received a call from my stepmother. "Rachel," she began, her voice dripping with a tone I'd never heard before. "We need to talk. Your dad and I were going over some things, and we don't think we can pay you back. Not anytime soon, at least. We have other priorities right now." I froze. "What do you mean, other priorities? You promised you'd pay me back." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When she finally spoke again, her words stung like a slap. "I mean, we're not paying you back right now. And frankly, Rachel, it's not like we can afford to. The wedding was expensive, and we've had to make sacrifices. We can't just throw that money back to you right away. And you know what? If you're going to make a big deal about it, maybe you should sue us." Her words felt like a punch to the gut. Sue them? How dare she even suggest it? My hands were shaking as I ended the call, but a new wave of anger washed over me. They had used me. All this time, I had been nothing but a walking wallet to them, and now they were daring me to take legal action. I couldn't let them get away with this. Not after everything I had done for them. They had crossed the line, and I would make sure they knew it. I spent the next few days in a fog of anger and disbelief. Every part of me was furious, but I also felt betrayed. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about respect. This was about the years I had spent supporting a family that had never once shown me the same care in return. My dad's refusal to pay me back wasn't just a financial issue, it was a clear sign that they didn't care about me at all. I knew I had to do something. The anger that had been simmering inside me now had a clear focus. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me anymore. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had a case. A strong case. My dad and stepmother had lied to me, manipulated me, and now they were refusing to pay me back despite their promises. They thought they could get away with it, that I'd back down because I was family. But what they didn't understand was that family or not, I wasn't going to let them take advantage of me anymore. I reached out to a lawyer, someone I had met years ago when I was dealing with some other legal issues. When I explained everything to him, he seemed surprised by the audacity of my father and stepmother. "This sounds like a pretty straightforward case," he said, his voice calm but firm. "If they've made promises to pay you back and haven't, that's a breach of trust, and they've essentially stolen your money. We can take this to court." I felt a wave of relief. At least now I had a plan. I wasn't just going to sit back and let them walk all over me. I had a right to my money, and I wasn't going to let them forget that. The next step was gathering evidence. It was crucial that I had all the necessary proof to back up my claims. I went through every single text message, every email, every conversation where they had promised to pay me back. And to my surprise, I found a goldmine. The emails were damning. They had admitted to receiving the money, and in some messages, my dad even mentioned how grateful they were for my help with the wedding. It was clear that they had no intention of paying me back, but now, with these messages in hand, I had the ammunition I needed. I was ready. Ready to fight back, to reclaim my hard-earned money, and to show my father and stepmother that they couldn't just push me around. I wasn't the naive girl they used to know, I was stronger, smarter, and I wasn't afraid to stand up for myself anymore. I filed the lawsuit, and within days, I had received a date for the court hearing. As soon as I got the confirmation, a new wave of determination flooded through me. I wasn't just going to win this case. I was going to make them regret every single decision they had made. They would have no choice but to face the consequences of their actions. The days leading up to the court hearing felt like a blur of tension and anticipation. Every night, I would replay the events in my head, imagining what would happen in that courtroom. I could already picture my father's face, the arrogance, the defiance, like he always had when he believed he was untouchable. He thought his money and connections could make everything disappear, just like they always had in the past. But this time, I wasn't going to let that happen. As the court date drew nearer, the weight of what I was about to do began to sink in. This wasn't just about the $120,000. It was about standing up to the people who had always taken me for granted, the people who had treated me like a second-class citizen in my own family. I had given them everything, my money, my time, my trust, and they had used me without a second thought. But now, they were going to feel the full force of their betrayal. The day of the hearing finally arrived. I walked into the courtroom with my lawyer, my heart pounding in my chest. The room was sterile, intimidating, with rows of chairs and the cold glare of fluorescent lights. As I sat down, I glanced at my father and stepmother. They sat together, their faces smug, as if they already knew they would win. They had done this before, bent the rules, manipulated people, gotten what they wanted. But today, I had the power. Today, they would finally face the consequences of their actions. The judge called the case to order, and the trial began. My lawyer presented the evidence, the emails, the text messages, the promises they had made. One by one, the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. The lies they had told, the promises they had broken, all of it was laid bare in front of the judge. I could see the shock on my father's face as he realized the extent of what had been exposed. The arrogance that had once been so evident in him began to fade, replaced by something else, uncertainty. The judge was meticulous in his questioning, and with every word, my confidence grew. I wasn't just a victim here. I was a force to be reckoned with. Every piece of evidence I had was a nail in the coffin of my father's lies. And when the judge asked them to explain why they hadn't paid me back, their excuses faltered. My father tried to claim that things had been difficult, that they hadn't had the money to pay me back, but it was obvious to everyone in the room that he was lying. It was my turn to speak. My voice was steady, but every word I said carried the weight of years of pain. I explained how I had been manipulated, how they had used my kindness against me. I told the court how I had been promised that this money would be returned, how I had trusted my father and stepmother to honor their word. I spoke about the sacrifices I had made to help them, the dreams I had put aside to give them what they wanted. But none of that mattered to them. They had taken advantage of me, and now, they had to pay the price. The moment I finished speaking, the courtroom fell silent. The judge took his time, reviewing the evidence and considering the case. I sat there, my heart pounding, but I knew deep down that I had done everything I could. It was out of my hands now. Then, the judge spoke. The silence in the courtroom was deafening as the judge leaned forward, his eyes scanning the papers before him. Every moment stretched into eternity as my father and stepmother sat there, staring straight ahead, unwilling to meet my gaze. I could feel their unease, the way their once certain posture had started to crumble under the weight of the truth. Their defense was unraveling, and I knew this was the moment I had been waiting for. The judge's voice broke the tension like a hammer striking an anvil. Based on the evidence provided, and the testimony of the plaintiff, I find that the defendants have failed to meet their obligations and have acted in bad faith. The money in question is to be returned to the plaintiff, with interest, as well as compensation for the emotional distress caused. My heart raced. I could hardly believe it. After everything, after all the lies, the manipulation, the betrayals, it was finally happening. My father and stepmother had lost. The judge's ruling was a powerful blow to their arrogance, a stark reminder that no one is above the law, no matter how much money or influence they have. My father's face turned pale. The defiance that had once been a part of him was gone, replaced by something I had never seen in him before, regret. It was too late for him to take back what he had done, but seeing that flicker of remorse in his eyes gave me a sense of satisfaction I couldn't explain. The same man who had once told me I wasn't good enough, that my needs didn't matter, was now standing on the precipice of losing everything he held dear. But the real moment of victory came when the judge turned to address the court. In addition to returning the $120,000, I am ordering that the defendants pay punitive damages for their deceitful actions. This court will not tolerate the exploitation of family members for personal gain. Justice must prevail. I watched as my father slumped in his chair, his once proud and arrogant demeanor shattered. My stepmother's face was flushed with anger and humiliation, her attempts to maintain composure now completely useless. They had underestimated me. They had thought they could bully their way through life, using their lies and power to control everyone around them. But they had made one fatal mistake, they had messed with the wrong person. As I stood to leave the courtroom, my lawyer beside me, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace settle over me. I had won. Not just the money, but my dignity, my self-respect, and the chance to finally free myself from their toxic grip. I had taken back control of my life. But I wasn't done yet. As I walked out of the courtroom, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The courtroom doors slammed shut behind me, but I wasn't thinking about the case anymore. I was thinking about what came next. The victory wasn't just about getting my $120,000 back, it was about taking my life back, about reclaiming the power I had given away for so long. The first thing I did after the ruling was to visit the bank. I stood there, watching the teller transfer the money back into my account. The same account I had originally set up for my dream home, the one my father and stepmother had stolen from me in the name of family obligation. But now, it was all mine again. And this time, I wouldn't be spending it on anyone but myself. I had dreams of a home, a place where I could truly feel at peace, free from the shadow of my toxic family. When I finally returned to my apartment, I took a moment to look around. I had spent so much time trying to make everyone else happy, trying to fit into a family that didn't care about me, that I had neglected myself. But now, I was free. I had everything I needed to rebuild my life. The journey had been long, but every sacrifice, every moment of pain had led me here, to this moment of freedom. I decided to take a trip, a small getaway to clear my head. The peace of the beach, the sound of the waves, was all I needed to remind myself that I was worthy of happiness. I'd spent too long living for others, but now, it was my turn to live for myself. Meanwhile, my father and stepmother were dealing with the fallout. Their social media profiles, once full of extravagant vacations and fancy dinners, had gone silent. Word had spread about the lawsuit, and people were beginning to talk. They had once been the image of success and power, but now they were nothing more than a cautionary tale of greed and deceit. The pride they once held so firmly in their hearts was now shattered, just like their carefully constructed world. The last time I saw my father, it wasn't in the courtroom. It was months later, when I received a letter in the mail from him. He apologized. The letter was full of empty words and regret, but it didn't matter. The apology didn't fix the years of pain and betrayal. It didn't change the fact that he had chosen his own greed over his relationship with me. It didn't bring back the trust we had lost. But what mattered now was that I had moved on. I had taken my life back into my own hands, and no one could take that away from me. My father's apology meant nothing to me. I had already won. And as I stood on the balcony of my new home, watching the sunset paint the sky with colors of gold and orange, I knew that everything I had gone through had led to this moment of peace. The revenge wasn't about the money or the court case, it was about reclaiming my dignity, my power, and my future. No matter how much my father or stepmother tried to fix their broken lives, they would never be able to fix what they had done to me. But I didn't need them anymore. I had everything I needed to move forward and create a life of my own, one free from the toxic grip of people who didn't deserve a place in it. And in that moment, as I looked at the future ahead of me, I couldn't help but smile. Because I knew that no matter what, I had won, and my life would only get better from here.